Good afternoon, everybody. Please, let's take our seats. Our panel this afternoon is Bridges in Innovation. I'm Dora Varvarigou. I'm a professor at the National Technical University of Athens. I'll take a few minutes to introduce our panelists today. Right next to me is Vassilis Antoniadis, who is the Managing Director and Senior Partner of the Boston Consulting Group in Athens, and the Regional Leader of the Finance Institutions Practice in Central Europe and Middle East, as well as a member of the BCG Global CEO Advisory Council. Vassilis was a government-appointed board member of Greece's National Council for Research and Innovation and advises the Greek government on green transition and post-pandemic economic recovery. He also serves on the boards of the Okay. And we also have Andrea Stavropoulos with us, who has been an early-stage venture capitalist for 25 years in the Silicon Valley, and now a partner at Threshold Ventures and previously at DFJ, where he has invested in consumer tech and enterprise infrastructure, mobility, and technology-enabled services, and currently serving on boards of multiple tech companies in the US. Over the last few years, in his effort to build his personal bridges with Greece, he has increasingly spent time in public service and non-profit organization. He is currently the president of the Alum Board of Harvard University Business School, a board member of TAIPED in Greece, a board member of Endeavor Greece, and also on the board of a newly started US think tank, the Desmos Policy Institute, which aims to build bridges between Greek diaspora and expertise and public policy in Greece. He has multiple degrees from Harvard University.
And I have the pleasure of introducing George Noulsis on the far left. From this side, he's the director and the chairman of the board of the National Center for Scientific Research, Demokritos. He has studied at the University of Minnesota, the chemistry department of MIT, and he has an executive degree from the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. His research is mainly focused on structural and thermodynamic studies of nanostructured soft materials, as well as biomolecules, primarily proteins. And I would like to add that George has been a great advocate and supporter of HIAS. Demokritos is supporting us. We are discussing whether perhaps the house of HIAS will be housed in Demokritos. He has been an advisor and coordinator, and we very much want to thank him. Another person that HIAS would like to thank is Spyros Artavanis-Tsakonas, who is with us, and he's the Professor Emeritus of Cell Biology at the Harvard Medical School. He's also Professor Honoraire at Collège de France and a member of the recently elected member, actually, of the US National Academy of Sciences, the highest distinction of his field. He is the chair of the National Council of Research, Technology and Innovation of Greece, as we all know it as ESETEC. And he has traveled the world like many other small Ulysses, as my friend Kaxiras likes to call us all the members of the diaspora. He has been at the University of Cambridge, the University of Basel in Switzerland, as well as Stanford University. He has been a faculty member at Yale and subsequently at the Harvard Cell Biology Department. And he has also served as Chief Scientific Officer at Biogen, and his research uses molecular and genetic approaches in examining how molecular and genetic signals are integrated to dictate cell fates and ultimately influence morphogenesis in development and disease. And last but not least, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my friend and fellow board member of HIAS, Dora Varvarigou, who is a professor at the National Technical University of Athens, the chair of the board of directors at ADAP, and member of the board of directors of the Podosaki Foundation. Dora has worked as a senior researcher at AT&T Bell Labs. He has studied electrical and computer engineering at NTUA and Stanford University, and her research focuses on data analytics, AI, cloud computing, and Internet of Things technologies.
And of course, last but not least, my fellow Petros Koumoutsakos, the chair of the board of HIAS. is a professor of computing in science and engineering, the area chair for applied mathematics at Harvard University, and a member of the US National Academy of Engineering. He has served as the chair for computational science at ETH Zurich. He has studied naval engineering at NTUA and the University of Michigan, as well as aeronautics and applied maths at Caltech. His main research is in computing and AI for scientific and engineering applications.
And so, maybe I will say a few words of how we plan to run this. There will be questions that will be addressed to select members of the panel. Not everybody will be addressing the same questions. We will make 2 breaks to ask questions from the audience and hopefully conclude in time for this long day. Thank you for staying with us.
Okay, Dora. So I've been warned that our discussion should stay focused on building bridges for innovation and not talk about innovation only. But, I'll take a break from these strict rules that we've set for ourselves to be able to understand innovation better, establish a common vocabulary about what we mean when we talk about innovation. And of course, entrepreneurship and innovation is when you act upon opportunities and ideas to create value for others in finance, in society, or in culture. But then we should focus our discussion and start with an anatomy of what we mean innovation. And I want to ask our colleagues here, first start with Vassilis Antoniadis on this question. Vassili?
So, if I understand correctly, we want to start by discussing what we mean by innovation. And the angle that I bring is a corporate angle because I'm an advisor to companies in Greece, but also outside of Greece. So in my business view, innovation is first of all related to investment. Investment in R&D. I mean, when we learn accounting, when we learn finance, there is such a line, which is a significant one in financial statements of large companies, which is called research and development. And this is what companies do in order to bring new ideas, new products, etc. Understanding that not every idea will succeed, there will be failure, and there need to be also lessons from those failures, and of course capitalize on the successful ideas. It also means investment in technology. I'm saying this because this is one of the biggest victims that we have experienced in Greece over the previous decade, the decade of crisis, that companies stopped investing in technology. And we see that now, in many respects, one could say now it is a catch-up period, so companies are investing much more aggressively in technology, but as we know, it just doesn't happen by spending a lot of money. There is also a learning effect, etc., and there is a lost decade of lost investment, lost learnings from having fallen behind on the technology curve for many Greek corporates. The last part of the investment side is also that investments do not happen in a standalone fashion, they happen in an ecosystemic way. So companies need to be connected with the academic world, with research, with the research community, and they need to be able to bring these ideas in a joint way. When I see very successful examples in Israel, which I very often compare, and I also cover in my role in BCG, I see that there is joint approaches that research institutions, that academic institutions pursue together with corporates, and that we have seen very little in Greece, so this part of investment is also missing. The second part of innovation is what I alluded to before, has to do with the tolerance for risk and failure. Unfortunately, it is also cultural. Failure is something that is not easily accepted in Greece. Everything needs to appear as being a success until it blows up. And we see it in all domains, in the business domain, in the political domain. Everything is going great until you get the results and something dramatic has happened. And then people wake up, oh my God, something went really wrong. I'm not going to comment on something that I heard recently, some prominent politician who said the economic cabinet of this party did not inform us that the market is recovering. I mean, in which world do you live to know that the market is recovering? Yes, it is recovering, but you don't need the economic cabinet to tell you that. But so that there are lessons from failing and from adjusting, and what I have heard in Silicon Valley, others, Andreas probably will comment on this, more celebrating failure. Maybe that's a bit of an extreme word to use in Greece, but learning and adjusting for the future. And the last part that for me innovation is very much related to is with communication, that one need to communicate the advances, one need to communicate the breakthroughs, one need to communicate and share and be able to leverage them for something that goes beyond a certain corporate entity, a certain specific organization, so that they are shared more broadly. Basically what I'm trying to say is thinking bigger and not just thinking within the confines of a specific organization. So this is what innovation means to me, and I started going straight to the content, and I forgot to first of all thank you for inviting me to be in this panel. It is really a great honor. If I look in this room, the members of the Diaspora make us very proud with their scientific advances. It's really humbling to be part of this conference.
Thank you, Vassili. It's like the corporate and finance venture capital angle to innovation is very important for our discussion. Now we are a group of scientists and technology people here, but I read in a study that only 35% of successful entrepreneurs are engineers or scientists. Most of them are business people, people that come from the study economics and so on and so forth. So corporate angle is very important if we discuss innovation and bridges with Greece. And of course, Andreas, your view on what's innovation from the venture capital side would be even more important, as money is the fuel to innovation.
So I did, of course, I knew the question about innovation was coming, so I did what everyone would do these days, which is ask ChatGPT, what is innovation? And it gave me a very good answer with paragraphs and bullet points and all that. But my friend Ioannis, who came in late, said, keep it simple, stupid. So I read it, all this, and at the end of the day, what I boiled it down is to two things. And I agree with a lot of the stuff. I'm going to come back to this question of risk. Two things: creativity plus risk. We had this great discussion before about what is creativity and whether AI can be creative or can figure it out or what have you. I will actually define it in the negative, in the sense that creativity may be close to what we call entrepreneurship in the basic factors of production in economics, land, labor, capital. And there's this fourth thing that we call entrepreneurship or creativity. Or if you talk to religious people, they might say psyche or pnoi or whatever, something that cannot be done by AI. That's how I define creativity. The thing where you need that spark, but it has to be coupled with risk. And by risk, I mean this value creation we talked about, which involves being willing to lose, being willing to fail. And I couldn't agree more with the comments about the cultural implications. And one of the biggest things that I think I'm grateful that the younger people are understanding, and I think that frankly the crisis had something to do with it here, is that the word risk is not necessarily anymore a bad word, right? So we can talk more about this, but at the end of the day, if you ask me what innovation is all about, is inspiration of some kind, along with a willingness to take risks. And at the end of the day, that's what venture capital does. We lose money in a good portion of the investments that, in the companies that we invest, and that's just fine, because you can only lose your money one time, but if you have a successful company, you can make it back tens, dozens, hundreds, thousands of times.
I would like to stay actually on the topic of risk and innovation and failure. So talking about bridges, perhaps sometimes people say in places like the US, you have to fail 50 times before you really can have a good success. At the same time, perhaps Europe is more conservative. In Greek, we have this word that's called ευθυνοphobia. Maybe if we want to be more bitter, we can say there's a lot of people don't want to risk because είναι βολεμένοι. So there is a question of culture and how culture affects the way we interpret failure or success, and respectively, how does this affect innovation and risk? So I would like to turn the question to Yorgos first. What is the role of failure, success, innovation, and risk? And after Yorgos finishes, I would like to ask Spyros to take over.
Okay, Petros, thank you so much. Before getting into your question, let me also just say how grateful we are at Demokritos for all the support we have received from members of HIAS in the establishment of the new institute in quantum computing and quantum technology. You guys helped us greatly, and Efthymios Kaxiras and Lydia Kavraki. We presented our proposal to you before we went to ESETEC, so we knew what we were talking about when we had to face Spyros Artavanis and Aristos Doxiadis, and now we are very happy to have a sixth institute at Demokritos, the first institute in the country for quantum computing and quantum technology, ready to announce the new director, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, if things go fast. Unfortunately, the elections delayed us a little bit, and of course, all the help we're getting for our new breakthroughs in autonomous digital manufacturing. This is the big collaborative project with MIT, actually, the Center for Bits and Atoms. So we are indebted to HIAS, and we hope we will continue this close relationship. It is a bridge, actually. This is the real bridge, and if in the future we'll have the opportunity to have HIAS in our campus, it will be great news for us. We are undergoing a major reconstruction for the next 2 years. If we find temporary solutions, moving you around, every 4 or 5 months till we settle, and you agree to that, I think we'll find perfect solution. So coming to failure, yes, risk and failure, it's incredibly important, but when you do innovation, and can you imagine Greek public organizations now that we have to get ourselves ready to support innovation, and it is unacceptable for us to take risks. Basically, it has gone into our DNA, and even though the legal framework allows us to take risks, the administrations are very, very reluctant to do that. So this has to change. Otherwise, we cannot get involved into technology transfer. We cannot attract private investments into research in this country. This is the only way that it can be done. We have also ourselves, the research organizations, attempt to transform. HIAS may be a wonderful opportunity for us, a guidance to help us transform in this way. Otherwise, we will never become as competitive as we should in the future, especially since technologies evolve so rapidly. They expand and they change so rapidly. So we have to aim at becoming competitive, and in a sense, dealing with risk, dealing with failure, and being prepared to support innovation, I think it's going to be a new kind of autonomy for the Greek public research institutions. Finally, some autonomy from this so close relationship with the government.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm the only academic here, but I'm painfully academic. So that's all right. I'm an academic. You're an academic? Yeah, no, but I said the panel.
Me too, Spyro, me too.
Well, innovation for me is something that is somewhat disruptive. If it's not disruptive, it's not necessarily innovation. A little or a lot, it doesn't matter. And to be able to risk, have risk or not, if you're a scientist, per definition, you are relying on risk. Especially if you're an experimental scientist, 90% of what you do fails. So if you're not allowed, if you are afraid of failure, then you're not a scientist. You should not be a scientist. So that's one of the most important things. Moreover, failure is part of good science, of high-quality science. And high-quality science is part of innovation and of knowledge-based entrepreneurship. So being able to push high-quality science in Greece in every way we can, and it's not only one way, This is absolutely essential, because if we don't have quality science, then we will not have quality, we will not have innovation, and we will not have knowledge-based entrepreneurship. And this century, knowledge-based entrepreneurship is absolutely essential. We're saying earlier between us that Uber is an innovation, but that's not the kind of, and maybe extremely successful commercially, but that's not the kind of innovation we're talking about, at least that I'm talking about. It's not the innovation that I would like to push for Greece.
Well, that was a bad planning of sequence of questions, Petros, because after what Spyros said, the high probability of failure in science and failure are interlinked together, I'm going to ask the question now about the difficulty to find funding, Spyros. So I want to turn to George and Vassilis and ask, maybe you can contribute to that later, Spyros, as well, and say that, people complain, young innovators complain that it's hard to find funding in Greece for their innovative ideas, and the ecosystem, the funding ecosystem it's much lagging behind compared to what you get in other countries, especially in the very developed entrepreneurial countries like the Silicon Valley area of the United States. So, Yorgo, how hard is it to find funding in Greece if you have an innovative idea?
It is hard, but it has changed dramatically the last few years, and I think the first VCs, the equifunds, Big Pie and Unifund and Metavalon, they have contributed in changing the landscape very, very fast, and so it is incredibly good news, the fact that these funds, these VCs are continuing, they are expanding, they are growing, so they're going to keep investing, and I think this way they will be able to attract international VCs as well. There are interesting changes in that. Maybe Andreas will decide to start investing in this market.
I'm an LP, but a happy LP in a lot of the fund.
So it has improved a lot. I recently heard Marcos Veremis giving a resume of how things have changed. It went from like zero capital in 2010 to almost exceeding 10 billion from the startups in deep tech today. So it's really very big change.
But let me ask you, to complement this question, Vassilis, with this discussion that has been developing. Do you think that high-risk innovation, very high-risk innovation, is a good type of innovation to have in Greece? Given that the available funding schemes are also smaller in size, so the probability of maybe the mean of the expected income remains the same, but then the probability of failing increases considerably, and maybe funds are not willing to go and fund so much risky scientific work like Spyros described.
Yeah. So I fully respect what Spyros says, right? I mean, innovation needs to be disruptive. That is very true. At the same time, we also need to respect that it is a small market. We are a small market. So in terms of just the sheer number of scientists, researchers, but also if you look at the funding, I mean, numbers like 10 billion, which is, I mean, I remember when Equifund started, we said, there will be 1 billion invested in innovation. I don't know if it's now up to 10 billion. It strikes me to be a big number, but I mean, that is a very big number for Greece. And I know we are now, when we hear in the VC, in the PE industry, etc., amounts being raised, it's in the trillions, but these are big numbers for Greece. Can we afford to have or can we have, rather, very disruptive ideas? I hope we do, but let us also start from the basics. When in 2010 it was zero, just to start having some first role models of startups that have succeeded, even though I will disappoint you and I will raise the bar lower. So for me, a startup that became a unicorn like Viva, even though payment processing might not sound like the most disruptive thing in the world, or TaxiBit, ordering a taxi, or Blueground, renting an apartment, it doesn't sound very disruptive. It is a start, right? And I think it is great because then it means that it can happen out of Greek, and I'm mentioning 3 examples, and I'm probably forgetting many others, but these are some great role models, and we need to have role models in Greece, because one thing that struck me when I came back to Greece is that all the role models were around politics. We didn't have role models in business, like new innovative ideas, etc., and now this is happening. So I think this is a great step, even though it might not be very disruptive, it might not be very high risk. I think that it is great that we have success stories. The last thing that I wanted to compliment to what Mr. Nunes said is not only do we have more funding which originated, and I think there was a major breakthrough in 2016 with Equifund and the whole ecosystem that it created, but I think what is also great is that we start developing a supporting infrastructure, like what we worked in ESETEC very closely with Aristos Doxiadis, like the Elevate Greece, which is a registry of Greek startups. Maybe there is 800 by a proper definition of Greek startups, so it's not such a big number, but it is a start, right? So my main point is that things are not great, but they're much better than they used to be, and we are off to a good trajectory. Now, a lot more things need to happen, like, for example, the connectivity with the global VC industry that I think will come if we have more examples like Viva, like Blueground, like TaxiBit, etc.
Spyros. Please.
Can I counteract? I mean, not really. I mean, I agree with you. Of course, it's much better than it used to be. And of course, Viva and Uber or whatever, Beat, is a good idea commercially. Well, I'm not talking about that. I mean, I have no argument there. We are talking about knowledge-based entrepreneurship. And this is something that is global. If you do a discovery that is in biotechnology or in biomedicine, let's say, which is something I know, that's why I'm saying that, it has to be competitive globally. There's no such thing as a bon pour l'Orient. It doesn't exist. It's not good for Greece. It has to be good for everybody to attract you, to bring money. That's what it's all about. And my thesis, maybe a bit idealistic or naive, is that in order to do that, we need to improve the quality of science here. The quality of science and the quality of education, which in my mind is one thing. That's not 2 things. Not in the eyes of the government, there are 2 things. But I think it's one thing.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we have the first unit of our conversation trying to define what is innovation, perhaps experiences from abroad and from Greece can help facilitate these boundaries between failure, success, and innovation risk. People can share experiences from Greece and abroad. Regarding funding, we had also some ideas. I'd like to stop here, pause here for a moment, the panel, and open for questions to the audience on these topics that you heard so far, if you want to share experiences or if you have particular questions to the panel. Yes, please.
Thanks for that. First of all, thank you to the organizers for the excellent quality of the attendance. My name is Tsakonas. I'm a VC here in Greece through one of the funds in 2015. There was funds before us. The government programs that were smaller. Our round of the Jeremy funds was like 60 million, Equifund 300 million, and there's more money coming from the government. So there is an evolution of what's happening on the funding side, and Andreas is an expert, Aristos is an expert, so this is just as a point that we're evolving. One thing I'd like to comment is this is a Hellenic Institute of Advanced Studies, and I think that what the key term here is Hellenic. So we need to differentiate between us as global citizens and us as Greeks. So what we have here is a global get-together, and what we need to figure out is how we can leverage all this know-how of the Princetons and the Harvards and the Oxfords and the Cambridges and all these areas where the Greeks are shining, and to the extent to which this is relevant, I apply them to the Greek state. But here, I would agree with Spyro here that, you know, if we're talking about innovation, it has to be global. VCs want to have global innovations. I know, to the point of Taxibit versus Uber. Taxibit was sold for 40 million. We're investors in that. Uber is for 40 billion. So, you know, we're far from being able to scale such businesses in our little country. So where do we need to focus is where we have a true advantage, and whether that's going to be in biology, or whether that's going to be in computer science, in AI, in quantum, or whether it's going to be any of these areas. So strategic thinking around there is important. The other thing that I'd like to point out as a comment, and I don't have a specific question, I'm just sharing some insights from the ground here. Is to, you know, to definitely build on what we call these bridges and fortify these relationships. We happen to be Greeks, we happen to be like our country, but we are also part of the world. So that's something that we need to be mindful of when we're talking about innovation at large. Thank you.
I will go, there was one, I will take two, one, two. You with the white shirt, sorry, keep it for the next round. Vassilis, yeah.
So the title of the panel is Bridges for Innovation. So what do you see as the connection, I mean, you touched on it, but not really, the connection between innovation and startups, especially the kind of startups that...
That's my next question, so...
No, I took it.
Okay, I would say it was your question.
So,
Thank you, Vassilis.
Okay, just a few clarifications.
I didn't finish, but it's okay.
Sorry, Vassilis. Sorry.
So what's the connection between startups and innovation for you? And when we're talking about bridges with the diaspora and with, you know, all of you abroad and, you know, your labs and your groups and your activities, what sort of innovation do you think we should make a bridge with? Is it like with setting up another startup to replace, you know, people's mothers and fathers in ferrying them around or washing their clothes or sort of bringing them food when they live alone? Or are we talking about actually, you know, deeper, better innovation? And how do we know? So Greeks have, in Greece, write a ton of papers that are peer-reviewed, so they're innovative in some sense. Where, you know, why isn't that the innovation we're looking for? Which I claim it isn't, but why isn't it?
We have, you are inside our brain, Vassilis.
You have been reading my notes.
Yes, that's what he's doing. Actually, those are the topics that we're going to cover as we go along. So maybe you can, all your questions will be answered, hopefully.
Aristo.
Okay, so a few comments on actual. First of all, in our business, in venture capital, there are two major types of innovation, which is business innovation and technological innovation. Business innovation is Uber, Airbnb, etc. There have been some very big successes in business innovation in Greece. Viva is one of those. The other one is Blue Ground, and Blue Ground is a global player. Okay, and yeah, and it's sorry?
Viva is a global player.
Yes. So on that we have been fairly successful. On technological innovation, in my mind, again, there's two subsets. One is based on academic knowledge, on research in research labs and in universities, and the other is based on deep technology, that is many man-years of actually writing code or doing data analytics, etc., but not something that necessarily would be done within an academic environment. And now, for example, we have a few very good startups that are doing well. They haven't been sold yet in data analytics that have not come out of the research community. I call that technology innovation. It is deep tech, but not linked to research. And then there is an innovation that is linked to research. Now, on that, we have not yet had successes in Greece, not major successes. Innoetics, that was bought by Samsung, is, as far as I know, the only spin-off that has exited up to now, and the numbers were not huge, but it was a breakthrough when it happened. But we haven't seen anything else yet come out of universities, and I hope this is what we're going to be discussing in the next few minutes.
Okay, so I will ask now Vassilis' question with my own words. So indeed, actually, we had the next question is how can we make an ecosystem for startups in Greece? We had a discussion with Yorgos and Andreas in separate occasions. I will not take the bite out of what Yorgos said about a jungle and a zoo. I will let him elaborate. I also would like to repeat what Vassilis said, that there are a lot of people who innovate in Greece in terms of research output, and why is it that such research output does not make it to actual innovations of the kind that perhaps Spyros mentioned. So I would like to first start with Andreas about how do we make an ecosystem for startups? What does your experience from Silicon Valley say? Can we transfer things to Greece? And then turn it over to Yorgos.
Sure.
Andrea.
So the concept of a Silicon Valley ecosystem, you know, as long as I've been in Silicon Valley since '97, so it's over 25 years now, and every 2 or 3 years we'd get the delegations from all over the world about how can we just copy the Silicon Valley model, right? With this thinking that it's something that you can design top down, or that it's something that you can have a national plan of strategy or whatever. That's not how it works, right? My former partner, Tim Draper, had a great concept that I've borrowed and I use all the time. This idea of why Silicon Valley is successful. The way he described it is because it's an equity economy. It's an economy based on what's equity? Participation, right? It's participation in each other's success, right? Where you go to the local barista at the coffee shop and they'll have an opinion about the conversation they just heard in the coffee shop half an hour before and say, hey, maybe I can paint the thing and get some shares, right? So there's a general understanding that success is something to be shared. And at the end of the day, what makes an ecosystem self-sustaining, I believe more than anything else, is that. So let's make it specific now to some of the questions and this relationship of whether it's, you call it business innovation, technology innovation, they're all of university. If you think about the ecosystem of Silicon Valley and why it's such a self-sustaining kind of virtuous cycle, you have all those pillars represented. Certainly you have capital. When I started in venture capital, it was a small clubby kind of business that they had to like create scholarships for people to be hired. With the information age, it's right dead center, big asset management category. So definitely you have the capital. But you also have the universities, and this will bring us maybe to another point I'm going to say for later about building bridges. But this concept of having universities that are research-friendly, that are applied research-friendly, not just pure research-friendly. Pure research, obviously, for the riskiest and most long-term prospect where you don't even want to think about applications, obviously, government, private philanthropy, you know, the universities themselves in their endowments, they can support that. The really pure research doesn't want to think about, you know, potential downstream applications. But they're also unabashedly close to translational research, to research that is sponsored by companies in ways that can maintain Chinese walls and all the checks and balances, all that can be done, and with transparency, everything can be done. This fear of corporates being on university campuses is, in my mind, for the birds, right? And Stanford and Berkeley are two schools, obviously Harvard for biotech and all that. Clear examples for that second pillar. So capital, universities that are very much focused on not just pure but also applied research and translational research. Then you have something we're discussing outside there, very important that we tend to think, which is the importance of big companies being around from whom you can poach people who are the examples of prior successes, that all of a sudden it's not Zuckerberg, whom I never met and I heard something about, but it's Zuckerberg, the dude who's living 2 doors down. Oh my God, I remember him from Harvard. Oh, if he can do it, I can do it, right? So this idea of using examples of success that are relevant, the reason why I'm so excited about the Blue Grounds and the Vivas and all that is because these are people who walk among us, among you, right? And hopefully people know and can talk to one another. So third example, large companies that you can steal from, that you have this sort of recycling of talent through small and big. And then beyond that, this idea of this equity economy where it's actually good to brag or good to say about the successful good things that happen to you, because others are participating. It's not the katsika to gitona that, I don't want to talk about how well I've done because, oh my God, it's a zero-sum game. And this, going back to Professor Artavanis' point, global outlook is very important for that. If as Greeks we think of the world as our market and not the local market, which is a zero-sum game, and we think big, then we can all be successful together in ways that we can talk about down in the panel.
Can I make one quick comment on what you said, Andrea?
You can take longer.
Well, is it? Okay, all right, fine.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry, Oro, just, I think that, I've been doing academics and academic research for almost 50 years, almost. I have never seen an academic who is not interested in applying his or her findings to society. And, so I think this is, and it is an old-fashioned way to think that now academics are against business. That's not true anymore. It's just not true anymore, at least in the universities that I've been to. I mean, there's an incredible appetite for starting a company. It's almost a status symbol at this point.
I was talking about the Greek ones. Those are the ones I was concerned about.
Well, I mean, but they'll come along.
Maybe you want to jump in?
Yeah. I remember when I visited Andreas in San Francisco, and I was trying to picture what can be done at Demokritos, and this is what I gathered, that innovation was about talent, it was about startups, and it was about cash. And he said that rock and roll was optional, so you try to work on the other three. Of course, it's difficult times. It's very competitive times for talent and for creating startups. Quality of research is amazingly what's important. If you don't have good quality of research, you cannot get the good startups in tech. And one way that we can get there, and I'm talking about the Greek ecosystem now, is exactly if we keep investing in innovation, because this it will make our research more competitive if we aim for a successful startup, if we aim for IP that can be licensed by a big corporate worldwide, and that will produce wealth for the organization, for our personnel, our faculty, for the society. This will make us very, very competitive as time passes.
Okay. I think now we have established a bit a common language about innovation and what are the elements of a healthy ecosystem. But now we come to the main question of this panel, which is the role of the diaspora in fostering and supporting this ecosystem in Greece. And I want to turn to Spyros and then to Andreas and ask what are, we discussed what are the important elements in building a healthy ecosystem of entrepreneurship and innovation, but now how can this diaspora help through the sharing experience, exchanges of know-how sharing, advising, and so on and so forth? How can we engage the diaspora in supporting in the creation of this innovation ecosystem in Greece? Spyros.
Okay. Through the ESETEC, we had the opportunity to evaluate, as many of you know, all the institutes, there are 35 institutes or something like that, in the Greek ecosystem, let's say. And all the institutes were evaluated by 5 to 7 members, a committee of 5 to 7 people, all of them coming from abroad. Most of them from the Greek diaspora, but not all of them. There were also just pure foreigners, so to speak, okay? What was absolutely amazing is that I haven't heard one no. When I asked, please come and help us, everybody was there. Greeks have an incredible advantage that only Israelis have. There is a inexplicable, yet extremely strong passion for Greece. Whether they live here, whether they don't live here, the Greek roots are extremely important in their life, in their existence, in their thinking, in their psyche. So we can actually, it's not difficult to take advantage of it. There's one prerequisite, and that is the people who will help would like to know that there are some consequences. They don't want to come here and just waste their time. And very often in academic issues, they feel that they are wasting their time. Because if they come and evaluate, Pandion, and then Pandion is doing nothing, take this evaluation and throws it in the garbage bin, they won't come again. They will say, Greece it's again Greece. So there is an incredible appetite to help. We can leverage amazing, actually, people. Yet, I'll say one example. The Bayraktar, was a student, Mr. Bayraktar, I think was a student of Yorgos Papas. I did not know, I learned it through my ESETEC experience, that robotics is a highly developed discipline for Greeks. The extremely high level, if not the highest level, people in robotics are Greeks. What the heck are we doing with them? Nothing. Nothing. The Robotics Institute that it finally started, it was not easy to do. Marangos, good people in Greece that are actually robotics experts. It was not easy to start that institute. It was not easy. Am I right? We had to fight, we had to argue, for no good reason. So, and they were backed by all of your previous work and so on. So, the diaspora is absolutely ready to help. The diaspora has an incredible amount of knowledge and power, intellectual power, and we don't take advantage of them.
But Spyro, how can we help?
Yeah.
How? The question is how.
I have another question. He asked, I'll take this how and I'll say, how do we build an ecosystem where we can use the willingness of the diaspora to help and do it in a sustainable way? What is the structure? Or is it because if you say Greece has to become innovative in order to be able to get innovation, so it's a chicken and egg problem.
I appreciate what you say.
At time zero that we are now, what are the things that we put in place to use this expertise, which also very willingly given to us, and put it and use it in a sustainable way?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I didn't answer you're right in me not answering the question. I didn't, because it's not an easy question to answer. There's no one formula. I think HIAS is one such example, to bring together extremely high-level people, high-quality people, who will be representing disciplines of all kinds. And I think that because if we need underwater drones, I'm just saying an example, there is plenty of people that we can bring around doing that. Now, it would be wonderful, for example, if the private business was funding something like that.
When you're done, I have some thoughts. I'll talk about it.
Okay. So, and unfortunately, the connection between private industry and academics, if you will, I'm using that word very loosely, it doesn't very much exist. And I think, again, I don't know anybody who is in academics research or technology that would not welcome an involvement of industry, with some, right of first refusal. If I discover something fantastic, and I'll give you the right of first refusal to exploit it, buying it from me at a fair market value, mind you, all right? So there are ways of doing that. There are ways of doing it.
You want me to
Andreas,
pick
Andrea,
up on that?
Please
No,
jump
no,
in.
no.
So the question is,
you've set it up.
how do we
How do we
it?
make the bridges?
How do we make the bridges?
Build
What
the
are
bridges.
steps? Yeah.
Build the bridges. So let's take a step back. So I promised fireworks. There haven't been enough fireworks. We're too much in agreement on the panel. We got to get this thing going a little bit. Exactly. But maybe in general. Yeah, maybe in general, yeah. So, besides a venture capitalist, I'm also an avowed capitalist. Okay, so I do believe in general. So, avowed capitalist, as in rational, evaluative, maximizing beings, that we are all rational, evaluative, maximizing beings, that given enough correct information, the free markets usually find the right answer. And they give you sort of the price that should be correlated with at least the marginal value of the good that you're saying. I'd start somewhere simple. I was giddy with excitement with the prior panel when you guys were all describing the type of research that you're doing and the thoughts that you have, which is for ethical stuff and obviously the giddy with excitement. Someone told me from Endeavor that that of all the university faculty in the US, that after the Indian nationality, that people who identify as Hellenic in some kind are the second highest per capita, the highest absolute number. You know that as well, then it has to be true. So we have riches of people that are literally the asparti, right? Hence the diaspora around the world, to your point about this being something Israel was able to tap into. And the willingness is there. You meet someone, say you're Greek, immediately you feel like you owe to help them, right? So the willingness is not an issue, and clearly the talent and the kind of exciting stuff we're talking about is not the issue. I would suggest, and I heard some great things I did not know about the Archimedes project and your idea about the universal AI, maybe not necessarily funded by government, but my point is not the specifics, but things like that, a monopoly on higher education that then translates into, research that gets funded by things that are considered appropriate. I just don't believe in it. Free higher education is not the thing, right? There's a reason why a Harvard education has a price of whatever it is, all in $100,000 a year. And it's too low. It should be higher, right? Now, price and the value of the education is not the same as what you need to fund it. Two completely different things. Completely different things. I went to Harvard, and I argue it cost me less than what I would have paid if I had stayed here. Full scholarship, including my room and board, everything paid, right? So I'm not saying it's easy. Simple is not easy, two different things. But I would argue that one thing is promoting the kinds of ideas that you guys were talking about in the prior panel in terms of attracting the kind of talent, thoughts, and ideas that can help across this entire ecosystem, not just to the academic side, but the private capital, the kinds of things that the local VCs, are doing today. They are going out. They are spending a lot of time on planes and tapping on people. And the last thought on that is something has changed. The 40-hour, the being somewhere in time and space for 40 hours a week, at least working in one job, that's kind of a remnant of the industrial age where you had to work in shifts and you had to clock in and clock out and your productivity was measured in terms of minutes of doing a relatively repetitive task. In this post-AI world where we talked about creativity and inspiration, where maybe you have machines that can go from idea to implementation in quicker steps, then maybe at the end of the day productivity is less about the hours you're putting in and more about how many glimpses of greatness, innovation, or what have you have. In models like that, countries like Greece that have a comparative advantage in terms of where you're living and the spontaneity of life and the happiness around you, to the extent they can attract productive people that do not necessarily have to move their entire life and take those risks, but maybe can address and can help each other in smaller quanta, that could be a model that we should look into. I know Portugal and other countries are looking at this whole digital nomad thing. I think there's ways that I'm not going to go on and on about that Greece can actually take some ideas from.
Thank you very much. You want to
I want to start by opening the question to the audience, but first asking a question myself, taking advantage of the fact that I'm in the panel, to both you and Spyros and you, Andrea. Actually, Andreas talked about first entrepreneurs in Greece should think about having the word as their market and not only like a constant sum game within Greece, but then to be able to attend or to go for the global market. Doesn't the branding of the country play an important role? And how can the diaspora help in that? You know, I mean, if you can give us a few clues. How do we go over the fact that the branding of the country is holding a lot of people from becoming successful in addressing the market abroad?
Is this a question for me? I mean, look, what's the brand of the country even mean these days, right? Professor Bertsimas, is he branded with a Greek brush, or is he branded with the MIT brush? Is he branded with the NTUA brush? Is he like, we all have these identities, and at the end of the day, if you're operating in a global market where collaboration happens at least 50% over Zoom these days in technology companies, then I argue Greek companies with Greek founders can be funded. They don't have to necessarily be incorporated in Greece, and a lot of the governmental, what do you call them, constraints in terms of, you know, how exactly you need to incorporate and all that, sometimes I don't understand, because at the end of the day, it should be about getting great research and great ideas, leave something back in the country in the form of IP, in the form of training, in the form of these other ecosystem pillars that I talked about before. So I actually think it's doable. And look at the Endeavor, you know, membership. Look at all these companies that are Endeavor members. These are globally competitive companies that all have Greek connections. Greek founders are based here or both.
Vassilis, I just want to say something in principle, because I'm profoundly disagreeing with you, and that is the notion that education has to be very expensive and not free. I am all for free education, but I am even more for quality education. All right, so I am for the private institutions, as Andreas Koudouvis said, because we need to try it. Fine, and if the market allows it, then let it survive. And if they manage to make a university that is of quality, of greater quality than the free university, mazel tov, as our colleagues in the South say. So I think that I just want to make that as in principle, to say that I'm completely, I'm for public education and public university.
Mission accomplished. We're getting some discussion.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. I think it will make a great dinner discussion, the public education, you know, coming from Harvard.
I'm afraid I'm not coming for dinner. I'm afraid I cannot come for dinner.
Okay, so, the one comment I wanted to make is, first of all, because the question was, how can the diaspora help, right? I think, and also the element of branding came to the discussion, and I think branding is important, but I think the diaspora should help business and technologically advanced ideas in Greece, not because they are Greek, but because they are great. Because if we start creating a system where it is done because, you know, the Greeks helping the Greeks, etc., it starts becoming a bit like philanthropy. And we do not want philanthropy. We want to fund innovation, and we want to fund great innovation. So that's point number one. And just to make it even more specific, one name, because we are saying role models, and maybe for me, Viva and Blue Ground are great, maybe for Spyros the bar is higher, but maybe different. But what about Albert Bourla, when he described the big investment in Thessaloniki, where they selected Thessaloniki which was in the shortlist, with a couple of other candidate centers, geographical locations for the center that was located, and of course the fact that he was Greek gave it a push. But what he said, at least when I heard him announcing it, is that it was a great set of scientists, researchers, etc., that stood at the global level, and of course the fact that he was Greek gave it a bit of an extra push. But that's the kind of support that we need from the diaspora. We don't want philanthropy, we want support of things that are great. One last thing, and that's now coming as an economist. There is the supply side, which is what the diaspora can supply, but there is the demand side as well. And one thing that the public universities in Greece, as good or maybe not so good as they are, is I do not see demand. I just don't know what it is, but Greek students do not raise their hand very often to say, you know what, I want to grab this professional opportunity. I want to look at this great research fellowship to go abroad. I want to tap into this source of funding and start looking into it and researching on their own in order to reach out to the world. Maybe it is the comfort of the Greek, sorry? Oh, it is very true, because I have come as BCG to recruiting the National Polytechnic School, and 2 students showed up to ask me how much do we pay. So it is true, I have experienced it as a potential employer.
Okay,
so
okay.
I don't want to, so the demand of students, the demand of scientists who want to reach out to get to know the world and ask for help need to be stronger. That's what I see from many other great universities in the world, and we have great universities as well, but I think we need to work both on the supply side and on the demand side.
Great. I think the conversation is lighting up.
I'm sorry, I fully agree to that.
Just a minute.
Every time
Okay.
we asked for help from the diaspora was there. I would agree with Spyros 100%. Very willing
Σε λίγο,
and pro
not
bono.
now. Ladies first. Okay, we have already a burning question from the
Yes.
first side. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Stavropoulos from Caltech. Thank you. This is a very interesting discussion, and the fireworks were evoked. I wanted to say on the how, the example of France with the type of Y Combinator type of workshops for not only graduate students doing studies, but undergraduates as well, where they know how to pitch an idea based on the research. This is in the area, I believe the Silicon Valley model has evolved. It's very successful. Times are very different, and as it evolves, it sort of mutate. So we have the similar type of efforts in Boston, in the Boston area, in Arizona, Texas now, and it's in Colorado, in Denver, with the universities that attach programs for entrepreneurship with their students, and the way they do it is through what E.O. Wilson was calling consilience of science, but it's really consilience of science and engineering, because now for all the different sciences of basic or fundamental sciences, there is engineering, and for the fundamental mathematics, there is computer science. So bringing these groups of people together in preparing applications to solve problems, and then which kind of problems? You mentioned before, there is the business problem or the business innovation, and there is the deep tech. It can be deep tech, not only software, but hardware, build innovation, build actual hardware if you want, build and when I say hardware, it could be biological hardware for vaccines, or it could be. Now, on that point of the deep tech, the way I think of it is that it takes huge amount of time, like internet and computing. It took huge amount of time, and then recycling the ideas in order to do on-demand economy, produced Ubers and all of that, all of these on-demand economies. But having the innovation is the new knowledge base, the breakthrough. So companies that, or startups, or the incubators, shall we say, of the academics at the very early level, where they appreciate that there is a runway of research before you have a product where the VC will come and fund you and take half of your company or 99% of your company for very little because you're a startup, or all of it.
15 to 25 usually.
15 to 25% of the company, right? But if this is a company with a breakthrough idea that, you know, is, then the VC is going
It's
to tell
still 15 to 25, it's just a different price.
Exactly, but you see what I'm saying? If you have angel investing and the incubation sponsored through the education system, you can have a runway to have, to support the deep, new knowledge base kind of entrepreneurship. So, and I don't have anything against VCs. In fact, I have helped my students get money in order to build companies. But the experience was that they, because they were basic scientists and they had an application, they wanted out of the VCs. So this is an issue that I think as part of the education and training of the young workforce that you want to prepare for the new economies, for the new emerging economies. It's not the same as before. You cannot exactly say that the internet, that the quantum internet will be the same as the internet. It needs runway to have research done.
I'm hearing two things that I don't think I disagree with at all. The first one being that the idea of being able to pitch your idea or somehow make bridges between even relatively sort of early stage pure research that may not in fact be ready. We're having this other, VCs are there to invest in things that have exits within some period of time. I mean, it's a business at the end of the day. We are responsible to our LPs. We are fiduciaries to people who give us money. So the reality is a lot of ideas that are being incubated within universities will not necessarily be ready for funding, and that's just fine. So things that can be done to prepare better younger students to understand the value that at the end of the day, maybe it's not just the research, but it's the way you talk about it, the way you think about are the puzzle pieces out there so that the world's ready with this little bit added to create something big. I think those are very valuable skills. And in fact, a lot of people, whether VCs or otherwise, spend a lot of time on such incubators. I think you probably employ huge pro bono help for that kind of stuff.
So I'm sorry, I would like to move on to the last two questions that I will merge into one. And then I know there are some hands from the audience that I hope to have time to return to the audience at the end. So the two questions that we had is, can we learn from accelerators from around the world? And in particular, we are interested in accelerators that our neighbors have, like the Israelis. And also, given our neighbors, how do our neighbors, like the Turks, do innovation? Should we leave innovation to the Turks, or should we have innovation for defense as well? And I would like to combine somehow these two questions. I don't know how the panel will combine them. I would like to start with Yorgos, and then I would like to continue with Vassilis, and then I would like to have the audience ask whatever they want. So let me have Yorgos first, then Vassilis, and then questions from the audience.
So deep tech for defense is, Brian, something quite new for Demokritos. I think it's something quite new for Greece. We have not been practicing it. I don't understand why. We should have been done that a long time ago. It opens up incredible opportunities, not only for research grants and research funds, but as I said before, for innovation and wealth creation in that sense. So we are leaving lots of things up to the Turks. And on the other hand, the Israelis have shown everybody how this can be done so that even the United States become your clients very, very fast. So we've seen a shift right now in deep tech. I don't know how important it's going to be the next few years, but NATO signaled the first signal. They created the NATO Innovation Fund, the first multinational multi-sovereign VC for dual-use deep tech. And It's a 2 billion euros fund, not a big thing, but as I said before, it's signaling. And the European Investment Fund is going to follow with an announcement sometime next week. And we see even the big one, Sequoia. I mean, they announced only 7 days ago 27 billion for defense, startups in defense, which is historic for them, and it was historic for NATO. So things in deep tech, I think, are going to be changing because of geopolitical reasons. I mean, investors, they are going to have to choose between China and the rest of the world. It seems to be the case. And that creates turbulence, I think creates also opportunities. For Greece, it's an incredible opportunity. Why? Because already we are participating in a network of accelerators for dual-use deep tech. That means we are up there. We have to perform at the same level London does, Tallinn does, Copenhagen does, Boston does. So, and our success will be there for everybody to see. And we have to keep it up there, because what? The NATO Innovation Fund, for instance, in Diana, will be selecting startups from all the country members of NATO, and they will be guiding them to accelerators in the United States, Canada, or Europe. Their success will determine very much the success of the accelerators. So for the first time, I think we are given, Greece, an opportunity to show we can perform, we can advance deep tech all the way to become a unicorn. And networking will be incredibly important for that. Mentoring will be incredibly important for that. So I think it's a great opportunity for the diaspora to play a role in that sense. So yeah, believe it or not, defense may be quite an interesting thing the next few years.
Which was the original beginning of venture capital, right? Was
yes,
defense companies in Silicon
yeah,
Valley in the 50s, right?
Yeah, that's because at the time the goal was power building and not short gains. Then it changed, now it's about power again.
I'd like to give the microphone to Vassilis.
Thank you, Petro. So I will speak for what I know. I know Israel just because I have been a few times given my role in BCG. So the way you experience the startups in Israel, and I have dealt mainly on the fintech front. So when you go to Herzilia, there is such thing as the registry of the startups, which is the startup nation, and this is funded actually by the diaspora. But at least you know, depending on the type of startup that you're looking to collaborate as a corporate, as a venture capital investor, etc., and you ask on the payments front or on the credit analytics front, etc., and they guide you to which are the companies, etc. So it all starts, if we have to say what are the lessons we can learn, how do we first of all keep a clean registry of which are the startups by sector, by specific technology, etc. Second, the accelerators that I visited, 4 or 5, they are accelerators that are that have deep corporate involvement, and as it was said very smartly, form the US. So companies like Citigroup, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, etc., were very much present because they see it as a testing ground of some of the new technologies, and it came to me within the first day quite apparent that it is very much a bridge that exists between Tel Aviv and the United States financial industry. So this exists. But again, it is not because it is Jewish American funding that is coming to Israel back to the homeland. It is because some great ideas are there. They're developed in an ecosystem and they are being supported and accelerated further by the US corporate side. And the same thing I understand, even though I do not know it so well, happens with many other of the startups that exist in many of the other sectors. So again, let's start with the basics. If we take now what has been created as the registry of the startups, it's called Elevate Greece. We take it to the next level and we give it more visibility. We try to give it to attract people like Andreas, who are in the VC world and have much better visibility on what opportunities exist in Greece. Some of them might be interesting, some of them will definitely not be interesting, and then try to see how, the same way that Albert Bourla brought Pfizer, there is many other prominent Greek Americans or Greek Australians, or we need to think of the diaspora much more broadly, because I'm very impressed in many countries that I visit how many Greeks of the diaspora are around Europe, in South Africa more recently, etc. I think we need to motivate them and connect them much more actively with what is great in our country, not because it is Greek, but because it is great.
And I would like to say also, just to specify it on the HIAS, we also have been inspired by things the Israelis have done, like the Weizmann Institute. It's a great blueprint for HIAS. The Institute of Advanced Study at Princeton is also another blueprint, and in these places, I think innovation, education, research are combined. I'd like to go back to, I have seen 3 hands. The first hand is by Dimitris Berchimas. You wanna? You pass. Okay, the next hand is by Jason.
Hi, Petros. Nice to see you again. I'm Iason Vassiliou. I work from Proton, Greece. We come from an acquisition about 20 years ago. We're a multi-ethnic startup, Greece and US. Technology hub being in Greece. So we have various experiences, and we have seen how a startup can invest and get acquired in Greece. So I have a question on, having seen the difficulties we have had at that time, on what things you guys believe have changed and what more things need to be done. So at that time, I don't think capital was the hard part. The hard part was being in Greece and not having what you say as an ecosystem. And the ecosystem from the place that I have seen, like Israel, is not really only the startups. It's basically the startups and the large corporations and government policy. And the way the startup nation emerged was not sometime in 2000, Israelis woke up and say, oh, we have good ideas, we'll make startups. For about 30, 40 years, they had a policy, centrally kind of designed, to develop high tech through funds that were coming for defense, to bring large US corporations like Motorola, IBM, and Intel, and create a lot of people and put a lot of people in these ecosystems. And decades after that, the startup started. So Andy Grove, attracting the diaspora is a good thing, but people respond to incentives. And Andy Grove brought Intel to Israel, but it's not because only he was Jewish. It's because they gave them free land, regulations, low tax rates, huge government funding, co-funding. And I believe if this had happened in Greece, give to a large multi-billion-dollar corporation, I mean, Athens could be burning more than December 2008 if they had done that. So that's one thing, how to attract large corporations, and Greek founders bring large corporations here. By the way, it has happened. The Perlegos brothers, 25 years ago, they made a 200 people wide office in Patras that, span several startups out of this. So it was a big success, and we cooperated with them. And other incentives include, for example, government policies that have to do with bureaucracy, taxation. I mean, unfair competition with the Greek job market. So for us, it was very hard to employ people because we had to pay them a lot more and spend a lot more than what a local Greek company, even big corporation would have, because they would be in the gray area. As a large multinational, we could not. We could not hire people as contractors, which was illegal, technically. They could. So an employee would cost us 3 times more. Then the other thing, we could not find people from the universities. I mean, how to solve this chicken and egg problem? There are no people trained because there's no industry. There's no industry because there's no people trained. And the other problem was obviously tax and social security. To pay handsomely somebody who works in the Netherlands and give them, say, 20,000 euro increase per year, 14,000 euros would go to the government, including corporate contributions. It's a lot of questions, it's a lot of difficulties, but I believe because people respond to incentives, there has to be a government role in that. And what you guys think that needs to be done towards that?
Can I make a very quick comment on that? Not on all that, but just on one aspect, Petro?
Quickly.
Very quickly. Which is the one thing Israel had it's not like Israel hasn't had governments go back and forth between, let's call it center-left and the right. But somehow they've managed to agree on certain things. I wish we could do the same, because one of the things is constancy, right? So like, let's agree. It can vacillate between center-left and right, but let's agree that things like innovation, education, startup, that those are good, regardless of which hat you're wearing. That would be one quick thing we'd do.
Costa?
Για την ακρίβεια, μου δώσεις πάσα εσύ, Πέτρο, για αυτό που θέλω να πω. Η πάσα ήταν που είπες για accelerators. Εγώ αυτό που ξέρω είναι πριν πάμε στους accelerators πρέπει να κοιτάξω το υπόλοιπα. Το 1995 όταν γύρισα στην Ελλάδα, ο πρώτος από τη γενιά ρομποτικής, μετά ο Βαγγέλης Παπαδόπουλος και ο Πέτρος ο Μαραγός, με ρώταγαν πόσο ωραία είναι να παίζεις με τα παιχνιδάκια σου. Γιατί το λέω αυτό, η ελληνική κοινωνία είναι πολύ συντηρητική. Και δυστυχώς αυτή η συντήρηση περνάει και στα παιδιά. Προτείνω λοιπόν, και νομίζω αν είναι το ρωσίδικο σκέψη, μήπως πρέπει με κάποιο τρόπο την έννοια του innovation, entrepreneurship και business development, αν μπορούσε το HIAS με κάποιο τρόπο να τη στηρίξει. Να στηρίξει δηλαδή ενημέρωση των παιδιών από το πρώτο έτος οι δυνατόν πάνω στο συσχετισμό της επιστήμης, αυτού που κάνουν, με το business development. Μια πρόταση και βεβαίως αναμένω και κάποια απάντηση.
Είναι πολύ ενδιαφέρουσα η πρόταση. Αυτό που προσπαθούμε να κάνουμε τώρα στο HIAS είναι να ανοίξουμε περισσότερο το ποιος θα είναι μέλος. Θέλουμε να ανοίξουμε, να έχουμε μέλη από τη βιομηχανία, από τους επενδυτές. Προσπαθούμε πάντα να κρατήσουμε το επίπεδο της αριστείας σε μεγάλο βαθμό, αλλά μπορώ να φανταστώ μέλη του HIAS ή άλλους ανθρώπους να δέρχονται και να δίνουν μαθήματα για entrepreneurship. Τουλάχιστον στο Harvard έχω ένα πολύ διάσημο συνάδελφο, λέγεται David Weitz. Έχει, δεν ξέρω, εκατομμύρια publications κτλ. Αλλά παράλληλα έχει κάπου 30 companies και διδάσκει ένα μάθημα, το οποίο είναι πολύ καλοδεχούμενο στο Harvard, για entrepreneurship για undergraduates. Ο David Weitz, ένας από τους καλύτερους επιστήμονες σε soft matter physics. Οπότε νομίζω αυτό θα ήταν ενδιαφέρον να κάνουμε κάτι τέτοιο και στην Ελλάδα. Μια τελευταία ερώτηση.
Και Γιάννης Εμμύρης από το Ερευνητικό Κέντρο Αθηνά. Μιλάμε ελληνικά και εγώ αναρωτιόμουν γιατί μιλούσαμε αγγλικά.
Ό,τι θέλεις. Μπορώ να το διαλέξεις ό,τι θέλεις. Τώρα που τέλειωσε η μέρα πάμε για ελληνικά τώρα.
Λοιπόν, δύο σύντομες παρεμβάσεις για τα μοντέλα των bridges που συζητούσαμε πριν. Πρέπει να σκεφτούμε, είχα ετοιμάσει την ερώτηση μου αγγλικά, out of the box.
You can say, έξω από το
Λοιπόν, υπάρχει ένα μοντέλο, λοιπόν, το prevalent μοντέλο, το συνηθισμένο μοντέλο είναι capital in, talent out για την Ελλάδα. Να σκεφτούμε και το ανάποδο. Δεν λέω ότι αυτό δεν θα γίνει, είμαστε μικρή χώρα, σύμφωνοι, αλλά να σκεφτούμε καινούργια πράγματα, καινούργια μοντέλα επικοινωνίας. Θεωρώ για μας, για το Αθηνά, αλλά γενικότερα και για τα άλλα ερευνητικά κέντρα, ότι αυτές οι μεγάλες προσπάθειες που γίνονται αυτόν τον καιρό, και ο Αρχιμίδης και η ρομποτική πλέον, και το έργο που αναφέρθηκε στο Δημόκριτο, είναι ένας τρόπος να αλλάξει αυτό το talent out, capital in. Έτσι. Το ίδιο προσπαθούμε να κάνουμε στο Αθηνά και σε όλο το οικοσύστημα. Και τα πανεπιστήμια πλέον έχουν βελτιωθεί πάρα πολύ, αλλά και τα ερευνητικά κέντρα που είναι πιο κοντά στην εφαρμοσμένη έρευνα, να το κάνουμε με τα startups μας. Αναφέρθηκε η Innoetics, έχουμε όμως πολύ δυναμικά startups που θα θέλαν να βγουν προς τα έξω, όχι μόνο για capital, και αντίστοιχα να δούμε startups από το εξωτερικό, μου έχει ήδη συζητηθεί το ενδεχόμενο, που θέλουν να έρθουν να εγκατασταθούν εδώ, όχι γιατί είναι Έλληνας, όχι γιατί δεν ξέρω καν αν όλα από αυτά που έχουμε συζητήσει έχουν Greek connection, θέλουν να είναι σε ένα καλό οικοσύστημα που βλέπουν ότι αναπτύσσεται. Το AI είναι ένα καλό παράδειγμα για μας. Αυτή τη στιγμή είναι πολύ δυναμικό. Σας καλώ να το δείτε από κοντά. Το πείραμα του Αρχιμίδη είναι πλέον full speed και θα ήταν ένα καλό μοντέλο για συνεργασία των Ελλήνων του εξωτερικού. Σε αυτό το τελευταίο, επειδή τέθηκε η ερώτηση τι κάνει η Διασπορά και τι κάνει το HIAS, είπαμε πολλά πράγματα. Ένα πράγμα ήθελα να προσθέσω, αφού είμαστε στο τέλος της ημέρας, έχουμε χαλαρώσει και μιλάμε ελληνικά, τους Έλληνες του εξωτερικού τους ακούει πιο εύκολα η κυβέρνηση. Τους ακούει πιο εύκολα η υπόλοιπη κοινωνία. Καλώς ή κακώς είμαστε μια μικρή χώρα που δεν μπορούμε να βάλουμε Έλληνες διαιτητές στα παιχνίδια ποδοσφαίρου. αν το ξέρουν αυτοί που δεν ζουν εδώ. Πόσο μάλλον να βάλουμε reviewers. Ανέφερε ο Σπύρος πόσο καλά δούλεψε αυτό. Έτσι. Η συνεισφορά του HIAS στο Ινστιτούτο Ρομποτικής ήταν κέρια. Και του ΕΣΕΤΕΚ βεβαίως, και τους έχουμε ευχαριστήσει πολλάκις.
Ουδής προφήτης στον τόπο του.
Ευχαριστώ.
Κοιτάξτε, ευχαριστώ για την επέμβαση που έκανες. Νομίζω ότι... Παρέμβαση, όχι επέμβαση, ήμουν τερματοφύλακας παλιά εγώ. Τέλος πάντων. Αυτό που θέλουμε να προσθέσουμε σε όλο αυτό το οικοσύστημα του Αρχιμίδη, του Αθηνά, νομίζω το HIAS είναι μια άλλη διάσταση και νομίζω σε αυτή τη διάσταση είναι κάτι που μπορούμε να φέρουμε, μπορούμε να βοηθήσουμε στη ρομποτική, μπορούμε να βοηθήσουμε κάπου αλλού, μπορούμε να βοηθήσουμε ανθρώπους startup. Και αυτό που χρειαζόμαστε νομίζω ένα χώρο όπου αυτό να μπορεί να πραγματοποιηθεί. Είναι ένα από τα κύρια μελήματα. Ο φίλος μου ο Δημήτρης ο Μπερτσιμάς λέει ότι χρειαζόμαστε 1 έως 3 killer applications επίσης για να το κάνουμε. Δεχόμαστε πάνω από 1. At least one, not maximum 3. Okay. Και να μπορέσουμε όλα αυτά να τα βάλουμε μαζί και μετράμε, δηλαδή μπορεί να βοηθήσαμε και εμείς λίγο για τη ρομποτική, αλλά νομίζω εσείς που είσαστε εδώ στο χώρο, ο Κώστας, ο Πέτρος, ο Βαγγέλης, εσύ είναι που το κάνατε τελικά. Έτσι, νομίζω είναι διπλή ρόλη και θέλουμε να το συνεχίσουμε αυτό. Όχι μόνο στη ρομποτική, να το συνεχίσουμε παντού και μια και μιλάμε για ποδόσφαιρο είναι οι ομάδες νομίζω. Παίζουμε ποδόσφαιρο, δεν παίζουμε τένις και αυτό θέλουμε να το συνεχίσουμε. Μαρία, τελευταία. Τι είπες, συγγνώμη.
Το ΕΣΕΤΕΚ βοήθησε.
Και το ΕΣΕΤΕΚ φυσικά. Ο Σπύρος είναι κεφάλαιο για την ελληνική κοινωνία, όχι μόνο για το ΕΣΕΤΕΚ. Μαρία. Μαρία.
Θεωρώ ότι είναι καταπληκτικά όλα αυτά που έχω ακούσει σήμερα. Θεωρώ ότι είναι καταπληκτικές όλες αυτές οι δράσεις που έχουν σχεδιαστεί, όπως με τον Αρχιμίδη, και είμαι ένας από τους ανθρώπους που συμμετέχω και νιώθω πραγματικά ευγνώμων και ήταν θαυμάσια όλη η εμπειρία αυτές τις μέρες εδώ και θεωρώ ότι οι Έλληνες της Διασποράς είναι ένας μεγάλος θησαυρός. Τώρα, αυτό που θα ήθελα να πω, μία πρόταση, είναι ότι ναι, να ενισχύσουμε όλες αυτές τις δράσεις, να γίνονται όλα αυτά τα πλάνα, αλλά να μην ξεχνούμε ότι η Ελλάδα δεν είναι μόνο η Αθήνα, ότι υπάρχει η Θεσσαλονίκη, η Πάτρα, η Κρήτη, η Θεσσαλία και... Τι είπατε? Τα Γιάννενα, φυσικά.
Και το Γήθιο.
Ναι, η Πελοπόννησος. Λοιπόν, ένα λεπτό. Γιατί το λέω αυτό? Με συγχωρείτε, αλλά θέλω πάρα πολύ να το τονίσω. Ας πούμε, για παράδειγμα, στην Κρήτη, είμαι καθηγήτρια στο Τμήμα Επιστήμης Πολιτιστών του Πανεπιστημίου Κρήτης και στο ΙΤΕ και τώρα μέλος στον Αρχιμίδη. Και νιώθω πολλές φορές ότι εμείς στην περιφέρεια πρέπει να κάνουμε τριπλή και δεκαπλή προσπάθεια. Έτσι. Οπότε, μην το ξεχνάτε όλοι εσείς που αγωνίζεστε πάρα πολύ για την Ελλάδα, την έρευνα και όλα τα καλά.
Θέλω να απαντήσω σε αυτό, ότι δεν το ξεχνάμε καθόλου. Νομίζω αυτό που είπε ο Ευθύμιος για τα Γιάννηνα δεν είναι αστείο. Έχουμε, παράλληλα με το Δημόκριτο, που κοιτάμε να έχουμε χώρο, είναι κρίμα που δεν είναι μαζί μας ο Νεκτάριος ο Ταβερναράκης, ο οποίος μας έχει και αυτός προσφέρει χώρο στην Κρήτη και το συζητάμε πάρα πολύ σοβαρά, να έχουμε και εκεί μια τοποθέτηση του HIAS στην Κρήτη. Και ένα που σκεφτόμαστε, ίσως θα μπορούσα να το ανακοινώσω, ότι ίσως το επόμενο HIAS Symposium ή αυτά τα events να μην είναι στην Αθήνα, αλλά να είναι στην Κρήτη ή στη Θεσσαλονίκη ή στα Γιάννηνα. Αντρέα, θα σε βάλουμε και πάλι να οργανώνεις, αλλά νομίζω ότι είναι σίγουρα πολλοί από εμάς που είμαστε στο εξωτερικό στη Διασπορά, αρκετοί από εμάς είμαστε από την επαρχία και καταλαβαίνουμε πάρα πολύ καλά αυτό το οποίο λες. Νομίζω είναι πολύ σημαντικό να μην υπάρχει αυτός ο διαχωρισμός. Ναι. Παρακαλώ.
Δεν ακούμε.
Αν μπορείς πάρε ένα μικρόφωνο.
Σας ακούω που μιλάτε για το brain gain. Θα ήθελα να ρωτήσω πώς θα προσελκύσετε... Τώρα ακούγομαι. Σας ακούω που μιλάτε για το brain gain. Θα ήθελα να ρωτήσω πώς θα κρατήσετε εδώ τα ελληνικά ταλέντα με αυτούς τους μισθούς που υπάρχουν. Ο καθηγητής πριν το είχε αναφέρει. Γιατί να μην δουλέψω για μια γερμανική εταιρεία, για μια αμερικάνικη, περισσότερη στις αμερικάνικα πανεπιστήμια. Δεν ξέρετε πώς είναι εδώ οι ελληνικές εταιρείες. Πώς θα αλλάξει αυτό το οικοσύστημα που λέτε, που σας ακούω?
Θέλει κάποιος από το πάνελ να απαντήσει? Μπορώ να απαντήσω κάτι, αλλά δεν ξέρω ποιος θέλει. Ο Γιώργος, παρακαλώ Γιώργο.
Μπορώ να σας πω ότι αυτή η κατάσταση έχει ξεκινήσει και αλλάζει. Αυτή τη στιγμή στα ερευνητικά κέντρα, για παράδειγμα τα δημόσια, εάν ένα ερευνητικό έργο χρηματοδοτείται ιδιωτικά, χρηματοδοτείται από ένα μεγάλο corporate, ένα μεγάλο επενδυτή, οι μισθοί οι οποίοι προσφέρονται δεν έχουν καθόλου πλαφόν. Και μπορώ να σας πω ότι 35χρονοι ερευνητές στη τεχνητή νοημοσύνη κερδίζουν 4-5 φορές το μισθό το δικό μου και δεν υπάρχει κανένα πρόβλημα σε αυτό. Άρα λοιπόν αυτό έχει αρχίσει να αλλάζει. Έχει αρχίσει και αλλάζει στο κομμάτι που αφορά τις ιδιωτικές επενδύσεις στην έρευνα. Γι' αυτό είναι και πολύ πιο σημαντικό να προσελκύουμε τέτοιες. Το κομμάτι που αφορά το δημόσιο χρήμα, αυτό ακόμα θέλει δουλειά.
Τελευταίο σχόλιο από τον Βασίλη τον Αντωνιάδη.
Το να μπορείς να αυξήσεις τους μισθούς, κάτι το οποίο ακόμα και μια φιλοεπιχειρηματική κυβέρνηση το λένε, θα μπορούσε να πει κανείς ότι μάλλον θα κοιτούσε το πώς θα αυξήσει τα περιθώρια κέρδους παρά να αυξήσει τους μισθούς, αλλά ο λόγος για τον οποίο μπαίνει ο στόχος να αυξηθούν οι μισθοί, πιστεύω ότι είναι γιατί πρέπει να πάμε σε υψηλότερη προστιθέμενη αξία. Θα πρέπει δηλαδή η οικονομία γενικά, και αυτό έχει να κάνει άμεσα με την καινοτομία και όλα αυτά τα οποία συζητάμε, να μπορείς να παράγεις και να εξάγεις κάτι το οποίο να έχει καλύτερη, να αξιοποιείται και να τιμολογείται καλύτερα προς το εξωτερικό. Αυτό θα επιτρέψει. Οπότε το ένα φέρνει το άλλο. Δεν είναι για να μπορέσεις να έχεις υψηλότερους μισθούς, σημαίνει ότι θα μπορείς να παράγεις υψηλότερη προστιθέμενη αξία.
In other words, productivity, demand supply works, but productivity και what the government can help είναι να σε κάνεις πιο productive με το να μην σε βάζει να κάνεις πράγματα που δεν θα έπρεπε να κάνεις in the first place σε πολλά πράγματα. Όταν λέω χαρτούρα, δικαιοσύνη, fix that, ανεβαίνει productivity, demand supply takes care of the rest.
Ωραία. Θα ήθελα να κλείσω αυτό το session. Θα σας παρακαλέσω να ευχαριστήσουμε τους συμπαίκτες μου.